All right, my friends, so today we're gonna learn how to be more stable on our board with something that I like to mention as staying on that lead foot, right? So for reference, I'm a regular skater, so however I talk about standing on your foot, make sure you're contextually applying it to your stance. So the only difference is if I'm talking about my left foot being the front foot, you're gonna be thinking about your right foot being the lead foot, right? If you're a goofy skater. For starters, the lead foot is where you want your weight to be centered over when you push, right? So that you're not wobbling like from the right to the left, right to the left, right? If I go switch stance, my lead foot then becomes the right foot. And instead of wobbling from the left to the right, I'm just gonna stay over my right foot, hinge at the hips so I can get low and reach the ground to push, right? At a very basic level, that keeps me stable when we add some speed, right? If we're just on the board, what's gonna keep us stable as well, I feel like I should have started with this first. What keeps us stable is making sure we're on the lead foot, right? So this is me centered over the lead foot in a regular stance, centered over the lead foot in a nollie stance, centered over the lead foot in a switch stance because I would be going this way, and then centered over the lead foot in a fakie stance because I'd be going this to my right. Right now, centering over that lead foot doesn't mean apply all your weight onto the tail. If you're on the nollie, the nose or the tail, if you're going fakie, it just means you want your weight centered over there because that's where you're going to be able to leverage the most pop, right? Whoops. And the reason I am emphasizing the nollie and fakie is because and switch really, because a lot of people have the tendency to stay opened up, stay facing towards their dominant foot even when skating switch, so it kind of look like they're skating backwards. So stay there. It'll look like this, right? Something like this, where they're centered over this back foot when you should be, like I suggest, centered over the right side so that you're opened up to whatever direction you're going and you have access to so much more, right? Instead of kind of being on this back foot and then compensating, not being able to look at where you're gonna go. You just lose control in many ways, on top of stability on the board. And so if we think about how this applies when you're doing tricks, we're gonna use ollies, 180s, and let's just say big spins and a frontside flip. We're pretty much gonna go over why I'm talking about lead foot instead of just the front foot, right? Because the lead foot changes when I do a 180, right? So the lead foot was my left when I popped, and then the right when I land, right? That's if I'm going that direction, because the lead foot, the way I define it, is the foot closest to the direction we're going. So if I'm going, let's say towards that obstacle right there, for reference, the foot closest to the obstacle is my left side. So when I pop, it's the left. When I land, the one closest is the right. So it's super important that we understand that. But let's say I do a 180 on this quarter pipe, the lead foot remains the left one because this one is closest to the direction I'm going when I begin the trick and when I end it. Because check it out, going, I pop, and I land. I'm centered over this right side. So one more time, a bit more, right? Centered. Now, it's not to say you can't get away with being kind of on the back foot centered, right? I kind of look more stylish sometimes. not me, not when I do it, but when some people do it. But it just increases the risk of you slipping back, and you pretty much you trade off style for stability. So, and I'm not saying that doing it the way I'm doing it isn't stylish, but I see some skaters, I can't really even think of any right now, but they'll land on their back foot and it looks cool, but it definitely isn't gonna be efficient. And so moving forward from that, the lead foot when doing it on a quarter pipe or on an obstacle like this, like a bank, maybe even a pyramid, it stays on the same foot, right? Let's talk about a trick like a big spin, right? Even if I'm going backside, or even just 180, right? Lead foot, centered over it. A lot of times I see a lot of skaters when they're going on ramps and doing 180s on quarters, they'll do this, and then they'll slip back because they aren't sure where they should put their weight when they land. For whatever reason, a lot of people tend to kind of stay on their back foot, and I think that has to do with some sort of like a fear, a lingering fear, or some like, and it leads to a defensive. Sorry, that lingering fear leads to a defensive posture. So think of staying over that lead foot as being in an offensive posture, and then being over here as a defensive posture. We're trying to aim, for the sake of gaining stability, to stay over that lead foot. Now, this gets a bit tricky once we apply it onto obstacles other than quarter pipes and ramps, and I think that's gonna be for another video. Definitely ask questions like how would this look, for example, in a nollie crook or nollie crook 180, stuff like that. But for now, we're just gonna keep it simple on flat ground and in quarter pipes. But something I do want to also mention is when you're doing let's say nollie 180s, right? The lead foot is, for me, would be the left, and when I land, it's gonna be the right. Right? Same thing with back, same thing with front and back, right? Lead foot left, and then right, closest to the direction I'm going. So that was nollie. Now let's do switch. If I go my switch foot, or your goofy lead foot, you're gonna be over the right and then the left, because that's the direction I'm going, right? This only changes when we're going on a quarter, right? Lead. So there's also other things that we add on to this concept of staying on the lead foot, but like opening up to the direction you're going, because that helps you settle in your weight there. So we can even apply that when we're doing 180s, right? I want to not only be over my right side, like so, but I want to make sure that my torso is opened up this way, right? Or towards the way you are going. So open up. A bit exaggerated, but that's how it is. Open up. And a big reason for that is because by default, we're supposed to look at where we're going, right? It's pretty much what you prefer in any situation when you're skating. And even though you can look at where you're going with a closed off, I guess, torso or top half of your body, it's much harder, and you kind of lose 50% of whatever you're going towards if you just simply like open up with the torso rotation. So, how are we doing on time?
It's gonna be 10.
Okay, cool. So we're not gonna have this video be too long, but what I do want to mention is this doesn't only apply to beginner skaters, intermediate, it's also for advanced skaters who have built on top of I guess inefficient patterns, and can always use this so that they can open up some variability in their skating. Because many times if you see a skater and they're restricted and it's hard for them to open up, then it becomes hard for them to do certain tricks. Now, it's not always the case, but I find that most times it's simply just getting used to being opened up in a switch stance, where a lot of other tricks kind of I guess appear as well. For example, I've known how to do switch frontside flips for a long time, but for a good majority of the time I would be closed off and doing this, right? I never really felt in control of that trick until, well, it wasn't like it was overnight, right? But it was only after that I got comfortable opening up that it was just easier to form, and my chances of landing it increased this much more as I did that and as I continued to practice. So now I went from it being uncomfortable to try to now I understand, right? I can feel that it's right there. And even when I land, I'm just most of the time landing over my left foot, which then becomes the lead foot. I feel like I need to land one now. Let me land one. Oh my god, one more, guys. Lead foot. Okay, that one's bad. Right here. Lead foot. Oh no. Did I just volunteer myself into a battle? Right? I was right there. Point is, it's much more effective when I go for the pop. I need to land it though. You know what it is? Earlier I fell and right now my spine's a bit stiff. Excuses. No, I need to land it right here. Just for the sake of the video.
Oh.
Well, that was horrible. Last one. Alright, point is, you can see how I'm like over the right and then I land on the left. That's the whole point of this. Having said that, practice staying on the lead foot no matter what stance you are. And just do quickly, because I realized I didn't really cover nollie or fakie. If you're going fakie, instead of just being on the right side, you want to think about opening up and at the very least being kind of with shoulders right over the board, right? And slowly you can open up. Slowly. It's very subtle because you don't want to change up the way you're doing things so quickly that there's no way for you to adapt to that slow change. So for nollie, many of us are too comfortable with staying open, that we're too open, so I would suggest slightly keeping the shoulder over so that you can be over that front foot, right? That way you can like really leverage that snap. You're pushing down right under you, because if you're trying to push snap the board but you're over here, you're not going to be able to get as much power as you would if you're centered over this. Oops. And the same goes for fakie skating. Having said that, there's definitely a lot more to elaborate with this concept of staying on the lead foot. So if you have any questions, if you want me to go more in depth to how half cab would look, or you know, something like a nollie back three or nollie frontside flip, or even any tricks onto ledges, talk to me and I'll be more than happy to make the video on that. Having said that, hope you enjoyed the video. Comment and do all that stuff, and then I'll see you in the next one.